today's topic are the best things about Kingdom Hearts. Why? Because I feel like bringing in some positive vibes. Starting with KH1, in my opinion, the biggest strong point of this game is the pacing, which means the way the story progresses and the speed at which the story progresses. And this, in my opinion, definitely is because of the whole Sora vs. Riku arc and how all of the big story points are not shoved into the end of the game, which is a big complaint that people had about Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories is a game that a lot of people complain about the gameplay of, and while I personally love it, it's not the game's biggest strong point. However, it is the story. The story is fucking gold. I especially like the fact that it's kind of two stories in one, because of course you first have Sora's story and then Riku's story, which revolve around different things. Sora, of course, losing his memories, and then Riku kind of finding out who he is. I'm really a fan of this because it adds a lot to Riku's character especially, and gives us an opportunity to see who he is at this point in the series. And while Sora's personality in this game is fairly similar to Sora's personality from KH1, Riku's a complete 180, and here we also get introduced to some of the original Organization 13 members, and all of that combined with the setting of Castle Oblivion makes for a really good and enjoyable story. And now moving on to Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. This game has one really big strong point, and that is also the story, even more so in my opinion than Rechain of Memories. This is one of the best stories in Kingdom Hearts ever made, and we get to know about Roxas in this one, about who he was before he was introduced in KH2. We meet more organization members, a lot of character development for specifically Axel. We get another trio, which is a big deal, and it truly is a tragic but beautifully crafted story, and an element that carries this game considering how tedious it is to actually play the game on a Nintendo DS. And to add to that, in my opinion, this is probably the best Kingdom Hearts game from a writing perspective. It's fair to say that the story in this game is really the biggest strong point, and it's likely the reason people choose to play, or not to play, but people choose the movie version of the game when compared to the actual original Nintendo DS iteration from 2009. Moving on to Kingdom Hearts 2, this one was a bit tricky for me because KH2 is a really solid game with a lot of really good aspects that are done really well, but for me the standout has to be the gameplay. Compared to KH1, which can sometimes feel a bit slow and sluggish, KH2 definitely feels more mobile, fast-paced, and so on, and this is definitely because of the growth abilities. And I also can't talk about KH2 without mentioning drive forms, which are to this day considered some of the best gameplay aspects of Kingdom Hearts ever made. So yeah, for KH2 I picked the gameplay because it was such an improvement from KH1. It's pretty much a night and day difference in quality, at least in my eyes. Moving on to Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. This one is another great story, which this time centers around 3 characters, and we also of course get a new trio in this one. And while I know a lot of people aren't particularly fans of how the story was handled with 3 different characters and pretty much the same story from different perspectives, I kind of am a fan of this, you know, just kind of seeing the story from a different eye, if that makes sense. And I also gotta mention with Birth by Sleep, that is one big thing with this game, and that's the music. The music is probably my favorite out of any KH game. The different character themes, the dearly beloved version, all of that is just done so well, and I don't think there's a KH game that has a more fitting soundtrack to the whole vibe of the game than Birth by Sleep. I really do love pretty much all of the OSTs from Birth by Sleep. And I also really enjoyed the final battle and the ending portion in general, as while it was tragic, I feel like that was really necessary for everything to come together nicely in the really beautiful ending portion of KH3. So yeah, Birth by Sleep, a great story, great music, and that was a really easy pick for me, unlike with KH2. And if you're enjoying this video right now, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as it would help me out a lot. We are trying to get to 1,500 subscribers currently, and also if you're interested in something like that, feel free to check out my memberships. And also, finally, share this video with your friends or anyone whom you know that might be interested. Recoded, I will honestly go ahead and skip because I know the story is really not a strong point, and I really didn't play much of it. So Recoded, I think it's easier for everyone to just skip this one. Now moving on to Dream Drop Distance. And Dream Drop Distance, even as someone who's not a fan of the game, this might be a bit of a controversial thing for me to say. I'm actually one of the few people that kinda enjoyed the whole time travel aspect of Dream Drop Distance and the general story, with Sora almost being possessed and Riku saving his ass in the end, and how the entire story leads into Cage 3. That's, in my opinion, the best thing about Dream Drop Distance, and it's really how the game connects Cage 2 and Cage 3, because shortly after Dream Drop Distance, of course, is when Cage 3 starts, and right after Cage 2, shortly after, is when Dream Drop Distance starts. So Dream Drop Distance is essentially this bridge between Cage 2 and Cage 3, and that's really my biggest strong point for Dream Drop Distance. It sort of helps establish everything that will happen in Cage 3, and while it may not be the most interesting story or the most fun game to play, at least in my eyes, the best part about this game is, of course, not the story itself, it is the contribution to the general narrative of the series. Now, going to Kingdom Hearts 0.2 Birth by Sleep, I almost also skipped this one, but I did decide to throw it in just because it did actually give us a taste of what playing Cage 3 would be like back in the time when everyone was really hyped for Cage 3. So of course, the biggest strong point for this one is the fact that it gave us sort of a little insight into the gameplay of Cage 3, which we will be getting to later on in the video. Next up, we have the entire X Saga. Now this one is pretty obvious. It's another narrative masterpiece where we get an insight into the kind of distant past of the franchise, and we get a lot of stuff for Ventus as a character. We get a lot of new characters, but the gameplay is just not the biggest strong point, I'll be honest. The gameplay is not really that fun. Moving on to Kingdom Hearts 3. Now this one for me was a no-brainer, just like Days. The gameplay for this one, don't get me wrong, I really like the story and the conclusion of the Xehanort saga and how it was all wrapped up, and like I said, a lot of people weren't really fans of the whole big story parts being shoved into the ending portion of the game, but I will go ahead and say that I really understand why most of the stuff was done like it was, and I do wish that we had more stuff related to the actual story sort of in the middle parts of the game, but as I said, it kind of is what it is with this one. But Square really outdid themselves in the gameplay segment of Cage 3. It's even more fun than Cage 2. It has a lot of similarities with Cage 2, but it's a clear improvement again. You have more crazy moves, and the gameplay is just as smooth as Cage 2, and my favorite thing definitely has to be the fact that you can now run up giant walls, which really was a nice touch and sort of a nice fresh thing for Cage 3 that we never saw before. And in general, I actually consider Cage 3 to be the most fun game out of the whole series to actually play, specifically for the reasons I just mentioned. And while some may not consider it as big of an improvement as Cage 2 was from Cage 1, I would have to say that it definitely was, at least in my eyes. And also a really big deal that I don't feel like a lot of people talk about is how big most of the worlds are and how much less loading screens there are between areas in every world compared to the older titles, which now at the end of this video leaves me wondering what kind of crazy shit we'll see gameplay wise in Cage 4, because Cage 3 is an absolute blast to play. And with that said, I want to thank you for watching this video. Leave your thoughts and opinions on this topic in the comments down below. Always love to read them and reply to them. Until the next video or stream, bye bye.